It takes a community to bind together to really make a difference.
Every 12 minutes, someone in the U.S. dies of a prescription drug overdose. That's 120 people in just one day. One by one, those we care about silently disappear. Every 12 minutes, someone a person loves becomes a statistic instead of a son. Someone becomes a memory instead of a mom. Most painkillers such as Vicodin and Oxycontin are basically synthetic heroin, just as addictive and just as deadly. This is not someone else's problem. These are our children, our parents, and our neighbors. These drugs are in the quarterback's locker and the honor student's purse, the laborer's toolbox and the CEO's briefcase, even our grandmother's medicine cabinets, because addiction doesn't discriminate on age, gender, or social status. Discuss the dangers of painkillers with your doctor, your children, and your loved ones. It's time to get educated, because knowledge saves lives. Take it from me. Every minute counts.
Once you see the signs, it's too late. The person is already in full-blown addiction.
My first experimental stages were around the age of 12 and 13.
You're not sleeping because you're so frightened that your child is going to die at any moment.
And I was a good kid in school. I was good at sports.
We could see that there was a problem, but nobody really knew where the problem was coming from.
I became addicted to my addict.
Many failed attempts at inpatient rehab.
I had heard the word enabling. Honestly, I didn't really know what it was. I just thought that didn't apply to me.
Wishing that I would just die.
These deaths kept occurring, and we realized that this problem was bigger than just educating kids.
You never feel like you're ever going to get out of it.
I'm Linda Davis. I'm a judge at the 41B District Court. I'm also the president of FAN.
My name's Katie Donovan, and I'm the executive vice president of FAN.
My name is David Clayton, and I'm the youth coordinator for Families Against Narcotics.
I have a daughter that's been in recovery for 8 years.
I am in recovery myself.
My daughter struggled with heroin and benzo addiction for many years, and I don't want anyone to experience what I experienced. I was seeking support, and the support that I had seen in other groups just wasn't the right fit for me. And when I went to my first FAN meeting, I was blown away by an entire community that came together. And that's what helped me more than anything else. It wasn't a room just full of crying mothers. It was a room of hope, yes, a room of hurt, but a room of education. And that's where I learned to let go a lot of my anger, and I became more educated in that, in those rooms with FAN than anything else. It helped me become more compassionate for the disease versus anger.
About 10 years ago in the city of Fraser, we had a number of deaths that occurred of young people, high school and just right out of high school age. Young people between the ages of 17 and 25 years of age. And it was really disconcerting because we had never seen deaths to overdoses of heroin before. So my next door neighbor was a police officer, and she decided that she wanted to form a town hall meeting to talk about what was going on. I was seeing a lot of young people come through court that was very unusual, that were addicted to opiates and heroin, and we could see that there was a problem, but nobody really knew where the problem was coming from. So we got together in the basement of a small church in Fraser, and there were about 100 people that showed up. A lot of them were young people in recovery. Others were addicts that were still using, but didn't like their life very much anymore. A lot of parents who had lost children showed up. We had school superintendents, a lot of community leaders, myself included in that. And we just started talking about this problem, and the more we talked, the more we realized that kids were getting pills and not realizing what they were taking, and it was escalating to where they were using heroin. So one of the young people that was there said that, you know, let us go into the schools and talk. Kids don't listen to adults, they listen to other kids. They need to hear the other side of this. So that year we started as a school program, just going into schools and talking, but the more we talked, these deaths kept occurring, and we realized that this problem was bigger than just educating kids. So we started going into hospitals, talking to doctors, talking to dentists, Lions clubs, almost any place that would invite us, we were there, taking young people who had gone through the addiction process and gotten into recovery to try to spread hope and to get rid of the stigma of addiction. What stops most people from getting help is the stigma of saying I'm an addict, or a parent saying I have a child that's an addict. And once that stigma is broken, then treatment is available and people can get well. But if they just stay in the darkness, there's no hope of recovery.
I got involved with FAN about 3 years ago, and I've always heard about FAN, and I went to a monthly meeting, and they asked if anybody wanted to share their story. So I simply stood up and shared a brief snippet of what I went through, and they decided that I was good and I should go out there and share my story with others. The rise in heroin abuse in high schools, that completely just blows my mind. It really does. Because me going into high schools and speaking to kids, even though I am much older than them, you know, they're so willing to talk to me and open up and be completely honest with me that they wouldn't be with their teachers or their counselors or anybody else that works for the school district. So when they tell me about all these things, and if you would have asked me that question 15 years ago, 16, 17 years ago, when I was in their shoes, in their seats, and you would say, does someone know where they can find heroin? Or does somebody know someone who's actively using heroin? I can almost guarantee you that maybe one hand, if any, would go up. Now when you ask that question, half the class's hand will go up. And when I am going to funerals of kids that are 15, 16, 17 years old, dead of a heroin overdose, it just breaks my heart, because a lot of time these kids, it's almost like kids are skipping that whole process of, you know, the alcohol, the marijuana, the prescription painkillers, the heroin. Some of these kids now are going right to heroin. And that's fact, it's happening. And when I, you know, just had a story told to me not all that long ago about a kid that was 15 years old and was dead of a heroin overdose. And it just is what these kids have to go through nowadays, and what, you know, society is showing, and it literally just it breaks my heart. It really does.
Piano, is everything okay in there?
Just a minute, Grandma.
So really, between the latest formal statistics by the CDC is as of 2014. We know those numbers have really risen since then. But between 1999 and 2014, the rate of prescription opiates that have been prescribed has quadrupled. But yet, the rate of pain and number of people complaining has not increased. And so with that, you'll see in populations where there is a very high amount of prescribing of opiates, there's also an extreme high amount of overdose rates. And now the latest figures are, if someone becomes addicted to prescription opiates, around 80% of those people will then turn to heroin. So it's an extremely high amount. And with that, the latest numbers that have been in general thrown around as of today, 144 people die every single day of an overdose. Can you imagine if that's a plane full of people, basically? If we had a plane crash in America every single day, as a community, as America, as the United States, we would be doing something about it. And in general, we're not. There's not a lot of funding towards it.
I got involved with drugs and alcohol at a pretty young age. I'd say my first experimental stages were around the age of 12 and 13 with alcohol and marijuana. And then that progressed into high school of just what I thought high school kids were doing, and that was just mainly just partying and having a good time. So we thought the accessibility became more available, I guess, and I found out more kids were doing it, and I was a good kid in school. I was good at sports. I was, I got along with just about everybody, and then it was right after high school is when the pharmaceutical painkillers came into play, and I was really just utilizing every substance I could at that time, as far as the Vicodin, the alcohol, and the marijuana, just to hide everything that I was feeling inside. And that ended up turning into, a nasty Vicodin habit, which, if you ask anybody that ends up going down the road of, opiate abuse, it started with the Vicodin, and then the Oxycontin, and then Dilaudid. And then once that became entirely way too expensive to fund, it was the heroin that ended up being the last. With, and I wouldn't even just narrow it down to just heroin, alcohol. I mean, it was just anything that I could use to make myself feel normal. And it took me to a pretty dark place. It was many moments of incarceration, many attempts, many failed attempts at inpatient rehab, homelessness, and separation from friends and family, isolation, and just a very, very depressing time, wishing that I would just die and not have to live, another day in that misery. And I think that's exactly why I go and I want to share what I went through with other people, with the youth of today, because when I was growing up, and I would give anything to go back to sit in their seats and hear someone like me talk, because I didn't have that. I had the DARE program, and I had Nancy Reagan telling me to just say no to drugs, and I think that, and I know, I always say that if I get across at least one person, that'll make my my time a success. And I know that I'm doing that because, I know when people come up to me, when teenagers come up to me afterwards, or me and my other speakers that present, they tell us that, they either are going through something, have a family member going through something, or they're thinking about doing something, and us sharing with them what we went through, I think is really making a difference.
And about the time I'm wore out and think I can't do this anymore, we're not making enough progress, and I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall, something good comes out of this. A parent will walk up and hug me and thank me for saving their kid's life, and it always happens at just the right moment, and so I just stay connected with it. I think it's work that has to be done, and my being a judge gets me indoors that other people might not be able to get through. We've really gone a long way with affecting legislation and making changes from the top down and from the bottom up. We're one of the most sought out groups in our state to speak about this issue, and when people think addiction, they think of going to FAN for help. So it's been an incredible journey to be on, and we just keep getting bigger, and it's exploding. I mean, there's so many people dying from this, and it's not just a Macomb County problem, it's a problem all over our nation. I think it's the worst health epidemic we've ever seen in our nation, and yet we're doing very little to resolve it.
I really want to educate athletes, especially high school athletes. If you become injured, maybe you don't need a prescription of 60 of an opiate pain pill. Maybe you only need 2 or 3 pills. Maybe you don't need any. It's okay to say no to that. And if you are prescribed it, take it as prescribed. And if you don't need it anymore, dispose of it properly, store it safely. Don't save it for that rainy day of the what ifs just in case. Go back to the doctor and do it the right way. The prescription overdose rates now are higher than a heroin overdose, but a lot of people don't realize that. And also the cocktail of medications that can be given, say mom is stressed out and goes to a particular doctor, and he may prescribe her Xanax to help her, and she's taking that as prescribed, and there's no harm in that whatsoever. But then maybe she has an injury and goes to the emergency room, and they give her a prescription for an opiate. If she takes those two together, it can be a lethal combination, and that's how so many accidental overdoses are happening, just by not being educated on this.
Well, we've got you all patched up. I'll give you a script for some ibuprofen, and that should help with the swelling.
Don't you think she might need something a little stronger?
You mean like this?
I don't think so. That's crazy.
Do you know that most prescription painkillers like Vicodin and Oxycontin are opiates, and they work just the same as heroin? And if not used sparingly, can lead to heroin addiction.
You know what? She's tough. We're just gonna stick to the ibuprofen.
Sounds good.
There is hope.
There is a way out.
There is hope. There really is hope.
We have a Farmington Hills location for Fan Chapter. Their meetings are the second Monday of every month at 7 p.m. at Woodside Bible Church, and it's a fantastic group of people.
You can go to our website, familiesagainstnarcotics.org. It's all one word, strung together, no spaces in between it, and there are links to everything.
I know people that are involved with FAN that just have a passion of helping people, and that's just the greatest thing. That's what it takes for a community to bind together.
Please get educated. Surround yourself with those that understand. We are all here in this, and we got to do this together.
You have to love an addict a different way than you do a child that's not addicted to drugs, and you need to surround yourself with parents that have gone through this and know the right way to get through this.
Silence is the #1 killer. If we don't talk about this, what good are we doing anyone? Share your stories. Come out and say, yes, this happened to me. This happened to my loved one. We can only grow as a community and bond together when we do that.